I slammed the brakes so hard my seatbelt locked across my chest. Right there where my uncle's quiet mountain ridge used to be 120 acres of pine, silence, and deer trails, stood a row of shiny little vacation cabins. 20 of them lined up like soldiers, roofs gleaming under the morning sun, tourists walking around with cocoa cups and selfie sticks, kids running across what used to be my land. A big wooden sign read, "Aspen Heights Cabins." My land, my inheritance. And a security guard in mirrored sunglasses had the nerve to wave me down and ask if I had a reservation. That was the moment it hit me someone had stolen my life's legacy. Brick by brick, board by board. I tried to laugh, but it came out like a growl. I told him, "Buddy, this ridge has my name on the deed." He didn't blink, just barked, "Private HOA property. Turn around." His tone wasn't even aggressive, just bored, like I was another lost tourist. So I backed up, parked on the shoulder, and sat there knuckles white on the steering wheel, watching strangers stroll across my uncle's land like it belonged to them. I could almost hear Uncle Ray's voice, that gravelly tone of his, echoing in my head. "They'll come smiling one day, and with papers the next. Don't trust either." He was right. I'd laughed when he said that years ago, but I wasn't laughing now. The county records office was sterile, the kind of place that smells like old paper and disinfectant. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with half-moon glasses, frowned at her screen. "Your ownership's still current," she said, "but there's a transfer here filed 3 months after your uncle's death." My stomach dropped. She turned the monitor slightly. There it was, his shaky signature, a notary stamp. Everything looked official, except it wasn't possible. The man had been buried for 90 days. "They forged this," I said quietly. She shrugged. "Not the first time I've seen something fishy. And funny thing, there's no record of permits for those cabins. No septic, no electricity, nothing. You could have the county crawling up there in an hour." I walked out holding a certified copy of the fake deed like it was a live grenade. It wasn't just theft, it was fraud. And it had my uncle's ghost written all over it. Driving back into town, I stared at the mountains, his mountains, and wondered if maybe I should just let it go. I'd been overseas for 18 months chasing a career, convincing myself the land would wait untouched. Now it was gone, paved over with gravel paths and rocking chairs. Who was I kidding? They had money lawyers' power. I was just one guy with a deed and a chip on his shoulder. Fighting them could take years, maybe forever. That was the moment I broke a little inside. Doubt whispered that I was too late, that I'd already failed him. But then later that night, scrolling mindlessly on my phone, an ad popped up, "Aspen Heights Cabins Exclusive Mountain Getaway." The photo was my ridge, my trees, my damn view, $400 a night. That's when my doubt turned into something sharper. I wasn't going to walk away. They wanted to sell my land? Fine. I'd buy myself a front row seat. I made a reservation under a fake name, David Cross, and drove back up. Ball cap pulled low old flannel. I looked like another tourist with a truck full of gear. The guard barely glanced at my printout and waved me through. Cabin 7 smelled like pine-scented candles and fresh varnish like a cheap Airbnb trying too hard. On the coffee table sat a binder titled Aspen Heights Vacation Program. I flipped it open. Inside were maps, rules, and a bright green Phase 2 expansion plan that covered all 120 acres of the ridge. They'd even renamed the ridge lines after HOA board members. I took photos of everything page after page until my phone memory blinked red. That night in the flickering cabin light, I emailed my buddy Chris. He worked in bank fraud. I sent him what I had. Within hours, he texted back screenshots. HOA accounts flooded with rental deposits labeled cabin rentals. Tens of thousands rolling in every month. My land was their cash machine. Then came the call. A woman's voice, smooth but sharp. "Mr. Drayton, I think we should meet privately. No lawyers. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement." I knew that voice. Everyone in town did. Karen Blake, president of the Aspen Heights HOA. Sweet as honey, dangerous as bleach. I agreed to meet her the next day at a coffee shop downtown. What she didn't know was that I'd have a hidden mic under my shirt and Chris sitting 2 tables away with a clear view. Karen walked in dressed like she owned the town navy blazer, white blouse, expensive watch that gleamed when she moved her hands. She smiled all charm. "You're a reasonable man, Eric. I don't want this to get ugly." I leaned back. "Define reasonable." She opened her purse and slid a white envelope across the table. $100,000. You sign a statement acknowledging the land belongs to Aspen Heights, and this whole thing disappears. I stared at the envelope. My pulse was hammering, but I kept my voice calm. "That's quite an offer." She smiled. "We both win." I nodded slowly, pretending to think while the recorder caught every word. What she didn't know was that I had no intention of keeping this quiet. I wanted her downfall public. 2 days later, the HOA held their monthly meeting in a packed community hall. Folding chairs lined up residents clutching coffee and agendas. Karen stood up front, queen of her little empire, bragging about record-breaking revenue. When she asked if anyone had new business, I stood. "Yeah," I said loud enough for the whole room. "Name's Eric Drayton. I own the land those cabins are built on." Silence. Then nervous laughter. Someone whispered, "Is this a joke?" Karen's smile twitched. "That land was gifted to us, Mr. Drayton. Everything's legal." I pulled the forged deed from my bag. "Really?" "Because this says the transfer happened 3 months after my uncle's funeral." "Pretty impressive, huh?" He signed from the grave. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen opened her mouth, but Chris, sitting near the front, hit play on his phone. Her voice filled the hall. $100,000, you sign the paper." The room exploded. Shouts, murmurs. Someone yelled, "That's bribery." Karen's face went crimson. She stammered, "That's out of context." I dropped their glossy vacation binder on the table. "Context enough for you? You renamed my land after yourselves." It was chaos. People shouting over one another. Karen's control shattered in front of her own board. I walked out that night feeling something shift. The fire was lit and she couldn't put it out. But she tried. Oh, she tried. The next morning, Facebook was flooded with posts calling me greedy, selfish, the man trying to destroy local jobs. Hashtags like "Save Our Cabins" spread like wildfire. 2 days later, protesters showed up at the gate with signs. But their jackets were too thin for mountain weather, their boots too clean. I looked closer. They weren't locals. They were actors. A bus idled nearby with a rental company's logo. By sunset, a journalist friend confirmed that Karen had paid for fake protesters. The article went viral. The HOA's community image crumbled overnight. That's when I stopped playing defense. I called it Operation Guest List. With Chris's help, we booked every single cabin for the same week under fake names. Check-in day arrived, and instead of guests, we showed up with signs zip-tied to every cabin door. Illegal construction on private property. Rentals prohibited. By noon, the property manager was losing his mind. Tourists were demanding refunds, and within 24 hours, every rental listing on major platforms was suspended. The HOA's cash flow dried up like a creek in August. Then came the courtroom. My lawyer, Frank Sharp, suit shark smile, filed 3 suits: trespassing, unpermitted construction, and unjust enrichment. The county DA opened criminal investigations for fraud and bribery. Day 1 of trial, the county clerk testified that the deed was recorded after my uncle's death. The defense tried to argue clerical error, but the judge wasn't buying it. Then Chris took the stand, showing bank screenshots, each payment labeled "cabin rentals," going straight into the HOA's account. Karen sat there, jaw tight, sweat glistening at her hairline. And then Frank pulled out Exhibit 17, a fresh trademark certificate. "Your Honor," he said, my client registered Aspen Heights Cabins under his own name before filing suit. You could hear the collective gasp. Karen's head snapped toward me. Her empire was collapsing piece by piece. Finally, Frank played the audio. Her voice clear as day. $100,000, you sign the paper. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. The jurors stared at her like she'd confessed to robbing a church. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Just air. The verdict came fast. Full ownership of the land and all structures restored to me. Damages equal to every dollar they'd made plus penalties. Over $500,000. And the DA announced criminal charges against Karen and 2 other board members, fraud, bribery, forgery. Felonies. When the gavel fell, Karen looked like a dethroned queen, eyes hollow, shoulders caved. All that power gone in a heartbeat. I didn't cheer, didn't smile. I just breathed, slow, deep, like the mountain air I'd missed for too long. The ridge was mine again, not because I'd inherited it, but because I'd fought for it, tooth and nail. And as I stood there, the lesson cut clear as the cold wind on my face. When you let people like Karen hold power, they'll take a mile, then 20 cabins. The only thing that stops them is someone willing to stand in their way.